I have just sold a good chunk of my altcoins and reallocated them into assets that I think have a much higher conviction plays for this year. After some numbers and data that continues to come out from the macro landscape, we cannot bury our heads in the sand. So I'm going to share with you today some of the changes I've made, why I'm changing them, why my strategy is updating, and answer some of the questions I've been getting around this is like the bottom signal and like you're capitulating and all this sort of nonsense. That is absolutely not the case, folks. Crypto changes, and unless you change with it, you will be left behind. So I want to dive straight into it and give you an update on what on earth is going on and why I'm making these changes. And I've been doing this for 8 years now, folks. This is not the first time I've changed my portfolio. It's not the last time I've changed my portfolio, and I will continue to update based on the updated data that comes with coming out, in the space, and understanding when you have these huge flush outs in the market like we've had the last couple of weeks. This is the best time to understand what's going on, what assets are rebounding, and really look a little bit deeper into some of the sectors. So I put out an update to our members yesterday around some of these portfolio changes. And I guess the biggest thing I want to reiterate is that no, I'm not capitulating. No, I'm not saying the alt season's not coming. I'm not saying any of that. However, I was holding some sectors in my portfolio and some assets that were underperforming, and I didn't feel as though they're going to continue to outperform for the rest of 2025. And I wanted to double down on those assets and sectors that I felt I had high conviction in and had a better risk to reward play. So nothing's really changed for me from a macro landscape. Like the key factors still, we've got, quantitative tightening still in place. Jerome Powell come out, the other day and basically just made it really, really clear that, they're not going to be changing quantitative tightening to quantitative easing anytime soon, only when rates are at zero. There are other levers to pull, and there are other ways that liquidity will come into the market, but ultimately that's not going to come anytime soon. So people just hoping for quantitative easing to come, not going to happen. Quantitative tightening still here, and overnight we still had inflation higher than what was expected. So macro conditions aren't great for altcoins, especially the super low cap altcoins. And one of those charts you can have a look here is like the others chart. The others against the total three others, which is basically looking at the liquidity out of low cap assets into like the top 20, top 50, top 100 assets. And you can see here over the last few months, it's just continually been on a downtrend. Money in the altcoin space pushing up into the top 20 and top 40, and that's where I'm getting a lot of my conviction in, and a lot of the sectors that I'm doubling down on in that space, which I'll share with you in a second. I'm also going to share with you the two sectors I'm super bullish on in those assets in a second. But yeah, really back to my update. I am cutting a fair chunk of my portfolio just to really simplify, and that's been my trend of this year: simplify and double down on those sectors that I think are going to really do well. One of those or two of those assets, you can have a look here. This is basically some performances over the last few months. Two assets that I'm really continue to be bullish on: Solana and Sui. This is Sui, for example, over the last year. A couple of that I haven't been as bullish on. If you look at something like a Ronin, a gaming project that I invest in, hasn't done a hell of a lot in the gaming space. I do think gaming will have a run at some stage, but just hasn't had a great bounce off that flush out. Gaming hasn't had a huge narrative right now. And also some of the memes have really had a really big flush out over the previous periods. You have a look at the sector returns over the last 30 days. Everything has really had a big flush out. Bitcoin and Ethereum is really the only thing that has held up over the last 30, 60 days. A lot of the altcoin space has been washed out, and in my opinion, that's due to the macro conditions. Yes, we have a pro-Trump presidency, and I do believe altcoins are going to have their time in the sun. But while we have these current macro conditions with rates still relatively high, inflation's just ticked up higher than expectations, quantitative tightening, no indication that that's going to stop, and also quantitative easing just basically not even in the picture right now. There isn't a lot of super positive factors for altcoins. Now, there are other ways, as I mentioned, that liquidity can come into the market. We won't go too into depth into that today, but there are different ways that other liquidity can come in, and we may see that sort of balance sheet continue to expand. And I know Raoul Powell's been pretty big on this over this next little while. Their sort of projection on that balance sheet, expanding, but really not really taking off until maybe next year. I think the only thing that's really changed here, in my opinion, in terms of altcoin season and these alts really taking off, is that I think the timeline's just been pushed back a little bit. So why am I selling? I'm selling down the assets that I have less conviction in, and some of those, I'm reducing a little bit of my exposure to DeFi, reducing my allocation into meme coins, reducing my allocation a little bit in gaming, and I'm moving those into high conviction plays. Those high conviction plays that I have right now are really around next gen layer one. So Sui, Solana. I'm also added Hype. Hype is one that I'm really bullish on. I'm really doubling down on those. I have a lot of Ethereum, a lot of Sui, a lot of Solana, and I just added Hype. And then also I haven't added any more AI to my portfolio. I already have Prime, but I haven't added these other three just yet. I do believe AI is going to have a good run, but again, macro conditions just hasn't been super positive. So doubling down on those sectors that I'm very bullish on. I have a large amount of Bitcoin, and that portfolio allocation has been so important. It's something I stress a lot with our members, and something that I think a lot of people overlook is that you can have great assets in your portfolio, but if you don't have the right asset selection and the right portfolio allocation, that's where you're going to really be caught out. And I think, in my opinion, as I said here, this is a post I did again to our members, that, I've been stacking Bitcoin now for really heavily over the last 12 months because Bitcoin continues to be, the leader across all the space, up 130% over the last 12 months. I think you should at least have about 50% of your portfolio in Bitcoin, and then sort of build those stronger assets around the outside. And if you look at, people sort of worrying about Bitcoin right now, we're sort of just range bound. Like, we haven't necessarily done like any huge correction on Bitcoin. We're just using bigger numbers, right? So if you look, we went through this sort of consolidation period earlier last year, where we sort of range bound about 30%, and we're back to that sort of range bound 30% now. Like, we're sort of just ranging anywhere between like 108,000, and 92,000. We're just talking bigger numbers. Like, if you step back and really take back and figure out that the market is just doing its thing, we're going through a consolidation period, that's where you can kind of understand where I'm at in terms of simplifying and really doubling down on my portfolio. So that's why I'm selling. How did I decide what to sell? Again, looking at those corrections, looking at the pullbacks, looking at the sectors, and just looking at, I guess, a lot of the sentiment and narratives and what people are talking about. Like, really the only thing people are talking about right now are around, like, the next gen layer ones. And Bearer Chain came out, I think the launch was pretty average. But like, Hyperliquid, Sui, Solana, you got AIs, obviously, a really big sector. A lot of the things that have cooled down, as I mentioned, gaming, meme coins, etc., I think they will come back, but you just got to make the decision of, one, are you wanting to be patient and remain sort of holding those assets throughout this little period while we wait for the market to correct? And that's okay. I've done that before in the past, but the decision I've made is that I've rotated probably 15% of my portfolio back into other assets that I think have a better reward profile to them right now than holding, assets that are sort of underperforming. And again, people could say, oh, Ben, you're capitulating. This is such a bottom signal. I'm not capitulating. I'm literally just updating my strategy to move assets into sectors that I think have a better return right now. And I'm moving on from those ones that I don't think. I'm being unemotional. I'm being very logical, and I'm cutting the dead weight before the next move. That's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm looking at this based on, liquidity trends. I'm looking at the macro conditions and understanding that, I don't believe that this cycle is going to be exactly the same as previous cycles. Like, there is literally millions and millions and millions more coins this cycle than previous cycles. And if you're just going to bury your head in the sand and just hope for the best that your assets come back, in my opinion, that doesn't work. I've been doing this for long enough to know that, sometimes that strategy doesn't work. Maybe back in 2017 and 2021, you just buy anything and it's all going to go up. Sure, but right now that's really not the case, and that's why I'm updating my strategy. So we had that inflation come in overnight, slightly higher than expected. That's not the most bullish news going around. Quantitative easing, Jerome Powell's sort of in this like back and forth with Trump at the moment. It's a very political thing that they see the world in different ways, and he's saying that we're not going to see quantitative easing only when rates are at zero. It's basically like an emergency thing, and we're a long way away off that at the moment. So that's one thing. I do believe, though, that we are in a huge bull market, and I haven't changed my opinion on this. I do think that the bull market continues to push higher this year. I do think we're going to need to see Bitcoin go into the 120, 150, 180 territory, then money rotate down, and then hey, maybe I'll add a little bit more allocation to my alts, and lower cap stuff when I think we're ready for a big move. But we're in another one of those correction phases. I think, again, if anything, my estimation on the peak of this cycle is going to be I think it was Q3, Q4 of this year. Potentially that's just been moved back a little bit. We've got the update from the crypto advisory or the crypto committee on Trump's team coming out in July. So hopefully they have some positive news there around maybe a Bitcoin strategic reserve. That's the thing that pushes us high into the next little period. We've got the sovereign wealth fund that they've been talking about, and you've just got Trump buying a heap of crypto. The last 24 hours, I think he bought another like $5 million worth of Ethereum. He's buying up, right? And this is why I have a large chunk of Ethereum in my portfolio as well. When you got the president of the United States and his crypto fund here just continuing to buy ETH, like if that's not saying something, I don't know what is. And sometimes that's just enough confidence for me to continue to be bullish on the fact that something's going to come out this year that I think is going to be Super bullish for the crypto space. Maybe it's going to be the announcement mid-year from Sachs and his team and the crypto guys that's really what's going to push the market higher. But, back to like what I'm buying next and what's next for my portfolio. Again, I'm using Bitcoin as my real wealth creation strategy. Like, ultimately I'm wanting to continue to build Bitcoin, the profits I'm making through my business, my salary, I continue to buy more Bitcoin. That's really been a huge winner for me over the last 12 months, and I continue to have a large part of that. Really, the next gen layer one, so ETH, ETH is just the OG layer one, but ETH, Sui, Sol, and then also adding Hyper. I think they have the potential to continue to like 2 to 4x. Like Simon did a great post today just around how, we've been in Sui for a little while. Like we're very, very excited about like the on-chain, how Sui's performing. TVL, daily transactions, partnerships, everything they're doing, even their marketing and user experience and their onboarding, like I think continues to be, leading the way. And I think Sui is going to do really well. And if ETH starts to outperform, I think that's going to flow down into some of those DeFi projects, AI coins, which I still hold. Again, I just had probably 12, 13 coins. I've sort of reduced that back to 8 or 7 now. If you want to check out all my portfolio, you can in our members community over Collective Shift. I share all the sort of the insights and percentages. But those high growth sectors and lower cap assets, as I mentioned, the liquidity is being sucked out of them right now. And maybe that turns at some point. And I do believe this turns at some point. But we need some sort of macro indicator for that to happen. Like it doesn't just bottom out off the base of where we are in terms of liquidity. So. I continue to be bullish there, stacking a large amount of Bitcoin. And again, with your portfolio, I just recommend you just go through your portfolio and think about it unemotionally. Like you don't need to think that you're capitulating and yes, some of these alts are going to be down. That's okay. This is crypto. If you look back, my portfolio is still up about 65% over the last 12 months. I've done really well in a lot of sectors, but this space is moving fast and it's moving faster than ever. And you need to move fast with it or you're going to be left behind. And that's really what we're trying to do at Collective Shift, is giving you an update on like what's going on, why the space is moving, what you need to be doing with your portfolio so you don't get left behind. Because burying your head in the sand and hoping for the best is just not a great strategy. So you've got to always adapt, update your portfolio, update what's going on. But that portfolio construction is the most important part, because I can sit here and go, yeah, these are the top sectors, these are the things I think are going to overperform. But if you don't have the right portfolio structure and you've got 38% in some random altcoin that's underperforming, it doesn't matter what I say, your portfolio is going to be down, right? And I think the people that are most fearful and want to give me some strong feedback around updating my strategy, those are the guys and gals that are probably underperforming their portfolio. So crypto is very emotional. I get it. You're upset. We haven't just launched into 2025 and everything's gone up, but that's not a reason for you to update, reconsider, restructure, and re-strategize for 2025. I want you guys to win. I want you to have the most up-to-date information. And I've been doing this for long enough to know that you can't just hold the same stuff every cycle and hope for the best. Like things change. And that's why I've gone through and I'm still very bullish, very, very bullish on this cycle, but I want it to be higher conviction, doubling down on the plays that I think are going to work best this cycle and not hold the crap that I have in the past and just let it play out. Doubling down, high conviction. And I hope 2025 continues to be a really, really, really good year. So hope that helps. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. Please leave me a subscribe if you enjoy these videos. I'll keep coming to you with these updates, and I'll see you in the next video.